The government is doing nothing to help, refusing to take anybody from the Mediterranean, refusing to take more than a few hundred from Syria, even though millions and millions of people have lost their homes in Syria. And I just think this is a humanitarian crisis, the greatest we have seen since the Second World War.
The bigger point I'm making is this could be a moment for Britain to show leadership so that we can get changes elsewhere in terms of immigration policy, particularly when it comes to EU migration. And they haven't shown that leadership. I think there are councils across the country who will be prepared to take people in.
Well, let's
make this an argument for what the change we want to see on bigger front.
So just before you do, Christian, just before you do, because you've asked for disagreement between us, actually what I was calling for this morning was agreement, for us not to simply be dividing us between us, and also calling on other political parties to support this call as well, to support the government to do so, and other parties across the country.
Jeremy Corbyn, would you restrict their benefits when they arrive?
I think restricting benefits is really the wrong agenda to go down. If people are here and working and paying taxes, then surely they have a right to benefits just like anybody else does. The other point is, on the numbers, 177,000 of those were actually students coming here to study.
Yeah, come to work, but contribute before you claim. That is the way most people would think about this issue.
This is an implicit criticism of Yvette Cooper's record as Shadow Home Secretary.
Actually, it seems to be the policy that we put forward at the election. I think it's exactly the same.
There is a real risk that we end up sounding like we think we can simply pull up the drawbridge and hope the rest of the world goes away. We need to do far more to take on some of the myths that there are. You know, you're far more likely to be treated by somebody in the NHS who's non-British than to be queuing behind them.
Jeremy Corbyn famously said that if Tony Blair has committed war crimes, he should be prosecuted. What's wrong with that?
Well, I think, look, I don't think we should just rush to judgment when we haven't had the Chilcot report out. And that's the whole point of the Chilcot report, is in order to look into what happened with Iraq and what happened very many years ago. And it's right, we should do so. I think, you know, just sort of making these sweeping political statements, I think, is not helpful.
I did say if.
The next Labour leader has got to lead our party out of the shadow of Iraq. I think it has prevented us from having a sensible debate about Britain's role in the world and a future foreign policy at precisely the time when David Cameron has overseen a quiet diminishing of Britain's role in the world.
Do you think Russia was provoked or not?
I think the Russian military and industrial connections used the opportunity to push their government, and the one thing feeds off the other. I don't say it's all the fault of NATO. It's also a responsibility. It's also the response of Russian nationalism. Surely, in this day and age, are we heading for a new Cold War? And it looks like it.
If you want my opinion, it sounds like you're making excuses for Putin there.
No, I'm not, Andy.
It sounds like it, Jeremy.
Andy, that is
no, it sounds like it. You're saying that he was kind of prompted and provoked into doing what he did in Ukraine.
And you know it.
Nobody makes
well,
you annex.
It sounded a little bit like it, because there's been an act of aggression here.
Andy, when have I ever made excuses?
Let him finish.
Well, I was listening carefully. You said NATO kind of put pressure on Russian forces, then subsequently put pressure on Putin.
There is nothing wrong with using quantitative easing to stimulate growth. Better doing that for productive industry and infrastructure rather than giving it to the banks to play around with as they've been doing.
The economy is growing. It's growing now. Now, growth has been late. That's
by
1%. But it is growing. So if you want to just print money when the economy is growing, that's just going to put up inflation. How are people going to think, well, where's this money coming from? Well, we just asked the bank to print some more money.
Yvette, it's not real. Are you going to go back to PFI on the funding of public infrastructure? Hang on. Are you going to go back to PFI, or are you going to go back to government borrowing in order to achieve growth?
But your proposal is just like PFI on steroids, to do quantitative easing for infrastructure.
Jeremy Corbyn, what kind of leader would you be with rebels, with people who vote with their conscience rather than with your party whip?
There's over 550,000 people are now members or registered supporters of the party, and I hope all the supporters become members so they can take part in the policy debates that come. The new leader, whoever it is, and there's no result yet, obviously, will have a mandate from outside the Parliamentary Labour Party.
From £3 supporters?
And members, and I'm saying that I want the supporters to become members, I really do. And there will have to be then policy debates within the party.
If Jeremy has won, does he get your loyalty?
We've got to unite this party is what happens, and there are things that Jeremy has said in this campaign that I agree with. We've disagreed on defence, and you heard that earlier, but on housing, I think he said things that I agree with. on education
that
as well.
exchange has just written
there
the
is
next
common ground.
Conservative Party
All of
ad
the people
campaign.
around this table have said things I agree with in this campaign, and the important thing is that this party unites.
Would you be as loyal to Jeremy Corbyn as he has been loyal to previous leaders?
Nice trick question there. I will always be loyal to the Labour Party, but let me say this. The fundamentals don't change. We lost the election because people didn't trust us on the economy or with their taxes, and because we didn't have a positive vision of a better life that most people could feel
So you would
part of.
retain your conscience
Okay?
and
They will remain,
your
and we have always
irreducible
won
core.
when people have trusted us on the economy and we have a vision for the future.
Yvette Cooper, you've also said you would go onto the backbenches if you don't win. Will you be loyal to him when it comes to Labour votes, or will you vote?
He
your
hasn't
own
won
way?
yet. You know, we've
No,
still got
exactly.
weeks to go. Lots of people are still making
and
their
Liz
mind
makes
up.
an important point, because there are an awful lot of people who actually haven't voted
They have-
yet. Actually, there are some people who haven't
absolutely
even had their ballots yet.
You have
so there
said
is a
you wouldn't
long way
stand
to
for
go
the shadow
in this,
cabinet.
and we've got
So
to
you've
keep
entertained-
campaigning in this leadership.
That's it. 9 days left before the close of voting, with the winner to be announced 48 hours after that.